I am Sasha Reed. I'm 22 years old, standing on the edge of graduation from Harvard Business School. But before I tell you about the billion-dollar company I built in secret, I need to take you back. Back to the place where this story began, a home where my value was always measured against someone else's. That someone else was my younger brother, Lucas Reed. Before I begin, let me know in the comments where you're from. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe, because what you're about to hear is a story of betrayal, resilience, and revenge. From the moment Lucas was born, my parents decided he was the chosen one, the heir, the prodigy, the future of the Reed family. I, on the other hand, was simply the responsible daughter. Not unloved exactly, but overlooked. Expected to excel without recognition, to shine only in ways that reflected on them. My father, Gregory Reed, was the chief financial officer of a Fortune 500 company. He lived his life by balance sheets and quarterly earnings reports, always analyzing risks and rewards with cold precision. My mother, Dr. Elaine Reed, was a renowned neurologist in Boston, a woman whose intelligence was matched only by her relentless expectations. Together, they were a power couple who valued achievement above all else. But in their eyes, the true vessel for their legacy was not me, it was Lucas. I can still remember the day they brought him home from the hospital. I was 4 years old, clutching my favorite stuffed rabbit, eager to meet my new sibling. My grandmother lifted me up so I could see him better. He had a tuft of dark hair and wide blue eyes that made everyone in the room gasp with admiration. My parents beamed with pride in a way I had never seen before. From that moment on, the spotlight shifted permanently. The favoritism began subtly. For my 8th birthday, I received a stack of educational books about science and history. Sasha loves to learn, my mother said proudly, but her voice carried the assumption that my joy came from discipline, not delight. 2 months later, when Lucas turned 4, he was given a miniature electric car that he could drive around the backyard. My parents clapped and cheered as he bumped into flower beds and nearly crashed into the fence. Boys will be boys, my father laughed, his eyes glowing with approval. The message was clear, my accomplishments were obligations. His smallest amusements were celebrations. Our family vacations revolved around Lucas's whims. If he wanted Disney World, we went to Disney World. If I asked for a trip that aligned with my interests, like visiting a science museum or attending a summer camp, my mother would pat my shoulder with that familiar, dismissive smile. Maybe next year, Sasha. But next year never came. In school, the imbalance became even sharper. I was the girl who studied late into the night, joined every academic club, won debate competitions, and pulled perfect grades. My report cards were handed over with curt nods, "That's what we expect from you." Lucas, on the other hand, coasted with B's and C's, yet received lavish praise for trying his best. When he scored a goal in Little League, after missing dozens of practices, my father cheered as if he'd just won the World Series. By the time I reached high school, I had learned the brutal truth: in order to get half the recognition Lucas received, I had to work twice as hard. And even then, it was never enough. One memory still burns inside me. My senior year, I was named valedictorian, a result of years of sacrifice, sleepless nights, and endless determination. I reminded my parents of the ceremony weeks in advance. But the day arrived, and I stood at the podium delivering my speech to an audience that did not include them. They had chosen instead to attend Lucas's basketball tournament, a regional game where he sat on the bench for most of the match. When I confronted my mother afterward, her expression was almost pitying. "Oh, Sasha. Lucas needed us there. You're strong. You'll understand." But I didn't understand. Not then. The disappointment hardened into something sharper, colder. That night, alone in my room, I made a silent vow: I would never again beg for their approval. My parents talked vaguely about helping me with college costs, but when the time came, the offers evaporated. "You're smart enough to figure it out yourself," my father said, already planning to buy Lucas a new car for his 16th birthday. I received a partial scholarship to Harvard, and I decided I would ask them for nothing. Instead, I worked 3 jobs this summer before I left: barista in the mornings, office assistant in the afternoons, and tutor in the evenings. I scraped together every dollar, refusing to let them have the satisfaction of claiming they had built my future. When I declined their offer to drive me to Cambridge, their surprise was almost comical. "I've got it covered," I said simply, hauling my suitcases to the bus stop. My mother hesitated, a flicker of concern in her eyes. "Do you have enough for the semester, Sasha?" I nodded. "I've been saving." My father didn't look up from his newspaper. "College is expensive. Don't waste your money on foolish things." That was my send-off. Meanwhile, Lucas was entering his sophomore year of high school with a brand new wardrobe, the latest MacBook, and the keys to a shiny Audi. The contrast could not have been sharper. But as the bus rumbled toward Cambridge that August morning, I felt something I had never experienced before. Freedom. For the first time in my life, I was building a path that belonged to me, and me alone. If you've ever felt overlooked by your own family, keep watching, because this part of the story might sound uncomfortably familiar. The bus rolled into Cambridge with a hiss of brakes, and I stepped off carrying everything I owned in 2 battered suitcases. Around me, parents hugged their children, unloading cars stacked with matching comforter sets, mini fridges, and brand new laptops. My arrival was quieter. No cheering parents, no glossy shopping bags, just me, my suitcases, and the determination that had carried me here. My dorm room was the smallest on the floor: a narrow bed, a squeaky desk chair, and a window that barely latched shut. But to me, it was a fortress. No Lucas posters on the wall, no photos of him in his basketball uniform, no constant reminders of where the family spotlight shone. For the first time, I had space that was mine. The first weeks at Harvard were brutal. While most of my classmates settled into routines of lectures, parties, and networking dinners, I was learning how to balance 3 jobs just to keep my head above water. Mornings started at the university library, shelving books before class. Afternoons I ran deliveries for a local restaurant, pedaling furiously through Cambridge streets with bags of steaming takeout. On weekends, I worked in a retail store on Massachusetts Avenue, folding sweaters and practicing a customer service smile that felt like it belonged to someone else. Sleep became a luxury, and food became an equation: which events served free pizza, which clubs handed out snacks, which lecture halls left untouched trays of sandwiches after panels. While others dined in cozy restaurants, I learned to stretch a pack of ramen noodles across 2 meals. And yet, strangely, I didn't feel sorry for myself. For the first time, my struggle was mine. Every dollar I earned, every class I attended half exhausted, every page of a textbook I bought secondhand, it was all proof that I wasn't built from their money or their approval. I was building myself, brick by brick. It was during one of those late nights at the library that I met Jessica Alvarez, a fellow business student highlighting used textbooks with the same intensity one had. She was from Arizona, raised by a single mother, and worked nearly as many hours as I did. Our bond was instant. We shared notes, split the cost of books, and took turns cooking the cheapest meals we could manage in the dorm kitchen. One evening, while stirring a pot of lentils, she asked, "How can your parents not help you at all? They clearly have money." I shrugged, masking the sting. "They believe in self-sufficiency." Jessica narrowed her eyes. "That's not self-sufficiency, Sasha. That's neglect. Especially when they're busy buying your brother designer clothes and cars." Hearing it said out loud, by someone who had no stake in my family dynamic, made my throat tighten. I had always minimized it, telling myself I was overreacting. But Jessica's blunt honesty pierced the veil. She was right. The holidays were the worst. My first Thanksgiving at Harvard, I stayed behind on campus while most students packed up and went home. The dorm halls echoed with emptiness as I pulled on my uniform and went to work a double shift at a restaurant, serving turkey dinners to families who laughed and clinked glasses while my own family barely noticed I wasn't there. I called home that night, more out of habit than hope. Elaine answered, her voice distracted. "We miss you, Sasha. We're just sitting down to dinner." Lucas made the most beautiful centerpiece for the table. Laughter and clinking silverware echoed in the background. I should let you go, I said quietly. Yes, good idea. Call again soon. Click. I hung up, staring at the phone, realizing for the first time that home wasn't a place I wanted to run back to anymore. But in the ashes of that loneliness, something new began to grow. A fire. Sophomore year, I enrolled in a financial technology course taught by Professor Wilson, a sharp-eyed woman who seemed to see right through me. One afternoon, after I turned in a paper analyzing flaws in digital payment systems, she asked me to stay behind. This is graduate-level work, she said, tapping my paper. You've spotted issues some professionals miss. Have you considered focusing on financial technology for your career? Her words lit something in me. Until then, I had been surviving, grinding through jobs and classes, driven by resentment and grit. But for the first time, I saw a glimpse of purpose. Something bigger than revenge, bigger than outworking Lucas's shadow. A chance to build something transformative. I walked back to my dorm that night with my heart pounding. The streets of Cambridge glowed under yellow streetlights, and I felt the whisper of possibility. For years, I had been told to dim myself so Lucas could shine brighter. What if, instead, I built a light so powerful no one could ignore it? That thought carried me forward, through exhaustion, through loneliness, through the thousand small humiliations of being overlooked. I wasn't just going to survive Harvard. I was going to leave it having built something no Bentley, no Audi, no applause at a basketball game could ever compare to. I was going to make them remember my name. Sometimes heartbreak doesn't destroy you, it focuses you. And this part of my story proves it. By sophomore year, I had adjusted to the grind. My calendar looked like a battlefield of overlapping shifts, lectures, and deadlines. Coffee became less a beverage and more an intravenous drip. But through the exhaustion, I was beginning to feel something unfamiliar, momentum. That was when I met Adrian Cole. He sat 2 rows ahead of me in an economics lecture, perfectly at ease in his crisp button-down shirts and expensive watch. Adrian came from one of those Manhattan families who didn't just have money, they had history. His grandfather's name was engraved on a library back at Yale. He was charming, quick-witted, and when he finally struck up a conversation with me after class, I felt the kind of flustered disbelief only someone who had been overlooked her whole life could feel. Adrian pursued me with the kind of confidence that assumed success. Dinners at hidden Italian restaurants. Weekend trips to Cape Cod. Lavish gifts that I always refused but that still appeared in my dorm room, wrapped in glossy paper. For a time, it felt like I had stumbled into someone else's life. For once, I wasn't the girl scrubbing tables at midnight or folding sweaters for a discount paycheck. I was Sasha, the girlfriend of Adrian Cole. But cracks appeared quickly. Adrian couldn't understand why I insisted on paying my half of every meal, even if it meant skipping groceries for the week. Just let me take care of it, he would sigh, exasperated. Why make life harder than it has to be? Because depending on anyone, especially a man who had never wanted for anything, felt like quicksand. I couldn't let myself sink. Ask your parents for help, then, he pressed one night, frustration sharpening his voice. Why are you killing yourself with all these jobs? I froze, the familiar shame creeping up my spine. I tried to explain, about Lucas, about my parents' expectations, about how asking for help from them was like setting myself on fire for warmth. But Adrian's brow only furrowed. Not everything has to be a struggle, Sasha. You're stubborn. That's not strength, it's self-sabotage. The words lingered like poison. The final blow came months later, when Adrian surprised me with plane tickets to Paris for spring break. It'll be unforgettable, he said, sliding the envelope across the table at dinner. But I had already committed to extra shifts, desperate to cover next semester's expenses. I can't go, I said quietly. His face hardened. You won't go. Because you'd rather martyr yourself than let someone love you. We broke up that night. Adrian walked out, and I sat in the restaurant's bathroom, gripping the counter, my reflection swimming through tears. Another door closed. Another reminder that in my world, love came with conditions I could never meet. But heartbreak, I would later realize, can sharpen you. The true turning point came in my junior year, in Professor Wilson's fintech class. I had already impressed her once, but now she challenged me to think beyond theory. Imagine a solution, she said one afternoon after class. Not just an analysis of flaws in digital payments. What would you build if nothing stood in your way? I stared at her, the question rattling around my brain like a loose marble. I had been surviving so long I hadn't considered that I could create. That night, I stayed in the library until sunrise, sketching out the first drafts of what would later become Secure Pay, a platform designed to make cryptocurrency transactions not only faster but safer, as accessible as swiping a debit card. At the time, cryptocurrency was volatile, often dismissed as a passing fad. But I saw something different. I saw possibility. I saw a world where people didn't have to depend on old institutions, or on parents who withheld love and money like bargaining chips. What if money itself could be redefined, secure, independent, free from the gatekeepers who decided who was worthy? The idea consumed me. I read every white paper I could find. I taught myself to code long into the night, running on caffeine and sheer determination. Jessica became my sounding board, listening patiently as I babbled about blockchains and algorithms. You realize, she said one night, eyes wide as I outlined my prototype, that this could change everything? I nodded, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across my face. For the first time, I wasn't just dreaming of escaping my family's shadow. I was plotting something bigger. Something powerful. Something they could never take away from me. This was the moment when everything began to shift, from survival to building something that could shake the world. By the summer before my senior year, my notebooks were no longer filled with class notes and essays. They were covered in diagrams, lines of messy code, and business models scrawled in the margins. Secure Pay was no longer just an idea in my head. It was becoming a blueprint for a future I could almost touch. While most of my classmates secured prestigious internships at banks or consulting firms, I holed up in the tiny apartment Jessica and I shared off campus. The air conditioner rattled weakly in the corner while we survived on instant noodles and dollar store coffee. She would quiz me on potential investor questions while I pored over code until my eyes burned. "Why do you sound like you're pitching to me in your sleep?" she teased one night. "Because if I can convince you," I muttered, rubbing my temples, "I can convince anyone." The Harvard Business School's annual startup competition loomed on the horizon. Winning meant $50,000 in seed funding and a year of office space in the university's Innovation Center. To most students, it was a career boost. To me, it was oxygen. I refined my pitch until every word felt like part of my DNA. Secure Pay wasn't just a product, it was a rebellion. A way for ordinary people to hold financial power without bowing to institutions, gatekeepers, or even families who decided who was worthy. When the day of the competition arrived, I wore the only suit I owned, a thrift store find Jessica had tailored for me with safety pins and determination. My hands shook as I stood backstage, listening to polished presenters with glossy slides and well-funded teams. But when my name was called, Sasha Reed, presenting Secure Pay, a strange calm settled over me. I stepped into the spotlight, and for once, it didn't feel borrowed. I spoke about speed, security, accessibility. I showed prototypes coded on borrowed laptops, explained algorithms scribbled into the night, and painted a picture of a world where crypto wasn't chaos but clarity. When I finished, silence hung for a moment, then came the applause. Loud, sustained, undeniable. Later that evening, when they announced the winners, I almost didn't hear my name. Secure Pay had taken first place. The prize, $50,000 and office space, was more money and support than I had ever received in my life. Not from my family, but from people who believed in what I was building. That victory attracted attention. Within weeks, I was invited to coffee with Michael Chen, a tech entrepreneur who had made his fortune in the early days of social media. He listened quietly as I explained my vision. Then he leaned back in his chair and said, "I'll make this simple. I'll buy your entire concept for $2 million right now. You can finish your degree without worrying about money again." $2 million. More than I had ever imagined seeing in my lifetime. But something inside me recoiled. Selling meant walking away. And I hadn't fought this hard just to hand my dream to someone else. "Thank you," I said carefully. "But I'm not looking to sell. I believe in what I'm building. I want to see it through." Michael looked surprised, but not disappointed. The next day, he called again with a different offer, $500,000 for a 15% stake. This time, I accepted. With his investment, I could officially incorporate Secure Pay, hire a small team, and take the first real steps toward building something that mattered. But building was harder than dreaming. 3 months into development, we discovered a fatal flaw in our security protocol. Fixing it meant rewriting half our code. I went 4 days without sleep, fingers trembling over the keyboard, mind spiraling with the thought that maybe Adrian had been right, that maybe I was sabotaging myself by insisting on carrying so much alone. One of our developers quit just before an important deadline, bank accounts dwindled, and the weight of leadership pressed like a stone on my chest. There were nights when I sat in the dark, staring at glowing lines of code, whispering, "What if I fail?" But every time I thought about quitting, I heard my father's voice, "You're smart enough to figure it out yourself." And so I did. It was during this chaos that I received a call from home. I hadn't heard much from my parents in months, aside from perfunctory texts. My father's voice was brisk. "Lucas has been accepted to Columbia. We're very proud. We've decided to buy him a condo near campus so he can focus fully on his studies." I nearly dropped the phone. A condo. At 19. "That's generous," I said, my voice hollow. "You should be proud of your brother, Sasha," Elaine chimed in. "He's going to do great things. He's the future of this family." Something in me hardened. I looked around at my cluttered office space, the whiteboards covered in equations, the team sleeping in chairs after another 18-hour day. My brother was being handed a future I was breaking my body to build. But one day, I promised myself, they would see. Not because I begged them to. Not because I needed their pride. But because my success would be too vast, too undeniable to ignore. And that realization fueled me through every sleepless night, every crisis, every moment when the code broke and the funding ran low. This wasn't just a startup anymore. It was my revenge. This is the part where the story shifts. From invisible daughter to billionaire. And where the people who once ignored me suddenly remembered my name. By the spring of my senior year, Secure Pay had clawed its way from whiteboard sketches to a functioning prototype. We launched a closed beta with a select group of users, mostly tech enthusiasts and a few small businesses willing to gamble on us. The feedback was overwhelming. Transactions were faster, security tighter, the interface cleaner than anything else in the market. Word spread quickly, and within weeks, investors were circling. Michael Chin introduced us to venture capital firms in Boston and New York. Meetings blurred together, conference rooms, endless questions, financial models scribbled on glass walls. At night, I would collapse on my dorm bed, adrenaline still surging, while Jessica laughed about how surreal it all felt. Then, after a whirlwind month of negotiations, it happened. We closed a series of funding round of $50 million. The company valuation, $700 million. I stared at the number on the contract, my hands trembling. $1 billion company suddenly felt within reach. At 22, the daughter who was told to figure it out herself had built something Wall Street now chased. By April, Secure Pay's valuation had officially crossed the threshold, $1 billion. We were a unicorn. And on paper, I was a billionaire. I told almost no one. My classmates knew me as the quiet student who worked too many jobs, not the CEO of a unicorn startup. Professors congratulated me for my grades, not realizing I was leading a 30-person team by night. Even my parents were in the dark. Part of me still wanted to see their faces when they realized what I had built while they were busy parading Lucas as the family heir. And that moment came sooner than expected. 3 weeks before graduation, I mailed invitations home, formal envelopes, complete with tickets. I wrote a note asking them to come. A child's request still lingering inside me, hoping they might finally show up. 4 days, nothing. Then, one Tuesday evening, as I left the secure pay office, my phone rang. Gregory Reed. "Hello, Dad," I answered, trying to sound casual. "Sasha," he said in his businesslike tone. "We received your invitation. We have a conflict." My chest tightened. "What kind of conflict?" "Lucas's high school graduation is that same week. We've planned several celebrations. Shopping in New York, family dinners. The timing doesn't work for us." I nearly stopped walking. "His graduation is Thursday. Mine is Saturday. You could attend both." "Well," he said, "we're buying him a Bentley as a graduation gift, and the dealership pickup is scheduled that weekend. Plans have been set for months." A Bentley. For an 18-year-old. I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. My 4.0 GPA, my scholarship, my company, dismissed. Lucas's average grades, his legacy admission, his car, celebrated. "You'll be fine handling this yourself," Elaine chimed in from the background. "You've always been self-sufficient." The words felt like chains snapping inside me. 2 days later, the dean of Harvard Business School called me into his office. "Miss Reed," Dean Harrison said warmly, "I have exciting news. Forbes has named you to their 30 under 30 list. More significantly, they're featuring you as the youngest self-made female billionaire in technology." The words stunned me. I had dreamed of recognition, but not like this, not so suddenly, not so publicly. "We'd like to announce it during the graduation ceremony," he continued. "Just a brief mention in your introduction as valedictorian. With your permission, of course." My first instinct was to decline. I preferred the shadows, the safety of being underestimated. But then I imagined my parents sitting in the audience, ready to leave early to shop for Lucas's Bentley, and hearing my name announced as a billionaire. "Yes," I said. "That would be fine." 2 days later, I received a text from Elaine, "Your father and I have decided we can come to your graduation after all. See you Saturday." I stared at the message, a bitter smile tugging at my lips. They hadn't changed their minds out of love. Something else had motivated them. And I would soon find out what. Graduation day dawned bright, the kind of perfect May morning that makes Harvard Yard look like a painting. I dressed slowly, adjusting my cap in the mirror. Despite their sudden change of heart, I kept my plan. I would take the bus. It felt right. A reminder of the journey. When I arrived, the campus buzzed with families hugging, snapping photos, and holding bouquets. I spotted them, Gregory in his dark suit, Elaine in pale blue, Lucas scrolling on his phone, looking bored. They hadn't noticed me yet, and for a moment I studied them from a distance. They looked the same as always. But I wasn't the same girl. The ceremony began with pomp and circumstance, crimson banners swaying overhead. One by one, names were called. When it was my turn, Dean Harrison announced. "Sasha Reed, graduating summa cum laude, class valedictorian." And I'm honored to share that Miss Reed has also been recognized by Forbes magazine as the youngest self-made female billionaire in technology, founder of Secure Pay. The audience gasped, then erupted in applause. I glanced toward the third row, where my parents sat frozen. My father's program slipped from his hands, pages scattering. My mother covered her mouth. Lucas, for once, wasn't staring at his phone, he was staring at me. For 22 years, I had been invisible to them. In a single sentence, the world had forced them to see me. And that was only the beginning. After the applause faded and the ceremony concluded, caps flew into the air like crimson confetti. Around me, classmates cheered, embraced, and took photos with proud parents. Professors I barely knew shook my hand with awe, murmuring congratulations as though I had revealed a secret identity. Through the crowd, I saw them. My parents. Gregory pushing forward, Elaine close behind, Lucas trailing with his phone half-raised as if uncertain whether to record me or hide behind the screen. For the first time I felt calm. "Sasha," my father called, his arms open wide, his voice louder than I'd ever heard it directed at me. "Why didn't you tell us? $1 billion valuation, extraordinary." He hugged me, stiff and performative, his smile beaming for the benefit of those watching. I accepted it, but I didn't melt the way he expected. His embrace was paper compared to Jessica's genuine warmth or Professor Wilson's proud handshake. "It never seemed relevant to our conversations," I said evenly. "You were always focused on Lucas's accomplishments." Elaine stepped forward, her social smile polished like glass. "Darling, we are so proud of you. A billionaire at 22, remarkable. You must let us in, tell us everything. The family should be part of this." The word family landed like a blade. Where had this pride been when I begged them to attend my valedictorian speech? Where had it been when I scraped together rent money, when I rode that bus alone to campus? "Secure pay has been my focus for 2 years," I explained flatly. "And I built it without your money, your advice, or your support." Gregory's smile faltered. "Still, imagine what I could contribute. My financial experience could guide your company. I should join your board." I almost laughed. Now he wanted to guide me? After telling me to figure it out alone? "I already have advisors," I cut in. "The difference is, they believed in me before Forbes did." Silence hung heavy. Elaine smoothed her dress, her eyes darting, calculating. Lucas, surprisingly, was the one who broke it. "Is it true?" he asked, voice almost hushed. "You're actually a billionaire?" There was no jealousy in his tone, only shock. Perhaps even admiration. For the first time, his gaze wasn't dismissive or smug. It was curious. Human. "Yes," I said simply. "On paper, at least. But more important than the number is what it means. I built something real." "That's amazing," he said quietly. "I always knew you were smart, but not like this." His words felt strangely genuine. More genuine than anything from our parents. Gregory cleared his throat, already pivoting. "We should celebrate. I've made reservations at La Marin." "I already have plans," I interrupted. "My team organized a party. They're the ones who got me here. That's who I'll be with tonight." Elaine frowned. "Surely you can reschedule. Family comes first." The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. "These people are my family," I said, my voice sharp enough to slice the air. "They were there when I needed help, when I doubted myself, when no one else cared. They clapped the loudest when I had nothing. They are my family." Gregory's face hardened, the mask of the CFO snapping back into place. "You're being unreasonable. After all we've done for you." I looked him dead in the eye. "What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Bought Lucas cars? Condos? Bentleys? I took the bus here today, just like you told me to. And I built $1 billion company anyway." The silence that followed was absolute. Even nearby families had stopped pretending not to listen. Finally, Lucas shifted. "Can I come to your party? Instead of dinner? I want to see what you've built." Elaine shot him a look, but Lucas stood firm for the first time I could remember. "Of course," I told him. "You're welcome." I left them standing there, Gregory simmering, Elaine forcing a smile, Lucas looking almost relieved, while I walked toward the people who had truly earned a place in my life. Jessica hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. Professor Wilson's eyes shone with tears. My team erupted in cheers. These were my people. My family by choice. 1 year later, I stood in my Manhattan penthouse, the skyline blazing gold and pink. Secure Pay had exploded past $5 billion in valuation. We had offices in 3 cities, partnerships with banks, and millions of users. On the wall behind me hung a framed Forbes cover, the billion-dollar underdog, Sasha Reed and the future of finance. But that wasn't the real prize. The real victory was learning that I no longer needed Gregory's approval or Elaine's validation. I had built a life where their absence didn't leave me empty, it left me free. And standing beside me, laughing as she read the latest scholarship approvals for our foundation, was Jessica. In the guest suite down the hall lived Lucas, now working with the foundation too, slowly unlearning the role he'd been cast in since birth. Family, I realized, isn't about blood. It's about who shows up when you're at your lowest, and who cheers when you rise. I had found mine. And I had built a kingdom none of them could take away.